know?
Do you really want to know?
I really want to know.
Really?
Hello.
Well, hello. Good morning. Welcome to the latest episode of the Project Failure Files, the series for anyone who manages people, projects, and processes for a living. I'm Sharon Weaver, CEO of Smarter Consulting.
And I'm Christian Buckley, founder of Collab Talk, and welcome to another episode where Sharon and I will explore management and leadership topics from the perspective of what not to do.
And this is the fifth and final episode of our mini series, where we're talking about the impacts of AI technology within the enterprise, how it's altering how we lead and manage people. And today we're talking about something that many organizations underestimate when rolling out AI, the human anxiety factor.
Yes.
Basically, if people feel threatened, you're going to slow down adoption, no matter how fantastic the technology is.
Yeah, this is there's always some degree of anxiety around new, because change, people don't like change, Sharon. I don't know if you've ever heard that before. They don't.
I mean, I could just say the word new outlook and
don't get people started about that. So no, but I think there's a fundamental difference though with a lot of these. We're not just talking about a random tool or a new email, Outlook tool and email app. AI adoption isn't just technical. There is an emotional aspect of this. Employees aren't just asking like, how does this work? They're asking, what does it actually mean to my job? What does this look like in the future? This is a foundational change in how a lot of the technology that we're used to using will work in the future.
Yeah, no, it's a real topic. It's really serious. Everybody's really afraid of, is AI going to take my job? Is AI going to do my work? Is AI going to show me up? Is everybody going to monitor everything that I'm doing now? Are you going to like watch every single minute of every single thing that I'm doing? People are scared. They're like really, really nervous. And frankly, I feel like they kind of have, a reality that they're watching that, kind of backs that up a little bit.
Yeah. What do you tell people when people say like, hey, is AI taking away my, going to take away my job? How do you respond to that?
I mean, I'm not their manager, so thankfully, it's not my position to say, but when I train on, AI and AI tools, one of the things I bring up is, AI is going to take my job as a conversation. And at the end of the day, my opinion is AI replaces tasks. AI does not replace people. And so can it do tasks more consistently, faster, more automatedly than a human can? And often in a lot of scenarios, it's a true statement. Can AI replace a human? Probably not for a really, 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 really long time, if ever.
Yeah, we get what that really, really, really long time is. Like, I'm not one of these people like, I don't believe there will ever be like the convergence, the moment or whatever, and AI comes to life. Like I'm not, that's the science fiction world there. Like, but when you let these fears just run, unmanaged out there, it can be dangerous in your organization, because what you will often see is not open pushback on the technology, but you'll see quiet quitting. You'll see that disengagement happen. You see people that won't really experiment. They'll do a few things and then there will be low adoption. And that's where it can impact then the value that you see as an organization out of AI, because people are they're not trying.
Yeah, well, and I think it could get misunderstood. A lot of times leaders will see that as, people don't want to innovate, or they're lazy, or they don't want to change, things like that. And really it's just anxiety because, if I learn this new tool set, what's that going to mean for me? How is that? It's not just about change. It's about change that's a little bit more than I'm comfortable with, or something that's unknown, or something that, maybe could potentially displace me completely.
If you've not watched this series, I mean, especially last week's episode where we talked about you need time to let the technology, the experimentation happen, and to kind of permeate through, do people start to adjust and understand it? But the other side of this is that there needs to be a certain level of transparency in the leadership team. If you are communicating in vague terms about what you're trying to accomplish, this corporate language of creating efficiency gains, and if you're not addressing the impacts, honestly, of what this is doing to, the change management aspect of it, the HR issues, the questions that are out there, the people issues, people will fill in the blanks themselves and they'll assume the worst about the technology. What I always tell people, Sharon, you've heard me say this too, is AI is not going to replace your job. People who understand how to get the most out of AI will take your job.
Yeah. No, I agree. I mean, I think making sure that people understand what is actually happening is really what matters. And if you want to lead from a place of, good intention, you have to make sure that you're positioning AI as augmentation, right? You just have to, as support, not substituting people, not replacing people. And then in addition to that, it has to be backed up by behavior. Like, don't go tell everybody, we want you to learn AI tools and then cut half your staff the next day. That's not probably the right way to handle it, right? Nope. You have to say, we're going to show you what this is, and then we're going to train you on it, and then we're going to support you in that change. And then we're going to make sure that we are getting value out of this as a group together. And if anybody, for whatever reason, is not part of that, that there's a transparent conversation about what that means and why that's happening.
I don't think it helps that kind of the mainstream press that's out there, you hear about, Oracle just laid off however many, 20, 30,000. It's like 30. Was it 50?
It was like 30. I think it was like 30,000. You're right.
Okay. I heard 30. I didn't heard 50. Anyway, but and so in the news, they just kind of wrap it up as, due to AI investments. Like, no. Organizations, look, are there jobs that are going away because some AI? Say, yeah, but those are very low numbers. Yeah. What they're doing is, most of these organizations, they're using that as an excuse to go and do other cleanup. It's just a reset that happened where, especially still coming out of COVID, where organizations like overhired and overstaffed for what they actually needed. And so there's an adjustment that was needed for a lot of these huge tech companies. It's not just because of AI that's causing that. But I think, again, you need to build trust about what you're doing and your approach to AI. And you do that by being transparent, by having a conversation within your organization. And the more, and this is another Buckleyism, as I say, I keep saying these, but it's, the more you involve people in the process, the more likely people will support the process, even if they disagree with it. If you involve them, they'll be more satisfied with the conclusions. And so you involve people, and you want the people that are doing the work on the ground and they're playing with AI. They're the best voices of, hey, here are opportunities. Here's where it could do more or less. And so if they're involved in helping shape the direction of AI, then they're going to feel less threatened. They're going to feel more empowered. And then again, giving that time for people to get comfortable. And then you're going to see productivity improve above that baseline.
No, I totally agree. And if you ignore it, it's the fastest way to get you off track. Addressing it, like you just mentioned, I think it builds psychological safety. I think that's really the foundation. Trust is the foundation of real adoption. And so I think all of those things make perfect sense.
Well, here for the next, so we're already 10 minutes in, but for the next 20, 25 minutes here, there should be a candid and timely conversation. Again, please share your experiences, especially if you've seen that anxiety inside your organization, or that have quietly stalled adoption within your org. And maybe if your leadership team took some great steps on how to reverse that, share. We'd love to hear that.
Yeah. In the meantime, let's get started with some definitions.
All right. So when I think of this, every technology rollout, any deployment that I've ever been on, there's the technical challenge. Like we got that. AI has something extra. It's more of an existential, threat to people, or it feels like that. People aren't just learning a new tool. They're wondering whether the tool is learning to replace them. And that question changes everything about how they show up every day to their jobs.
Yeah. And I think ultimately what you're trying to say is this anxiety, right? This anxiety that's happening. It's not just a technology change. It's a behavioral change. It's an emotional change. It's, is this tool, I've never in a million years thought that Word was going to replace me, right? I've never thought that Outlook was going to replace me. I didn't even think Teams could replace me, right? You still need me to be able to do things. For the first time in kind of corporate history, right? From an information work perspective, we're looking at this tool that effectively can do some of our tasks for us. And so the immediate thing that everybody jumps to is, well, if it can do my job, then what do they need me for? And so I think the definition of this anxiety is really the understanding that all of a sudden I have to immediately understand what my value is, defend my value, and compare my value to what I can do versus what a software application can do.
I think part of this, though, from again, looking at conversations that are happening in the boardroom at, if you're getting, lack of adoption from employees, the conversation most leaders are having, it's the, how can we get more people to use AI and where? And they're interested in seeing that and the productivity improvements there. But the conversation that they should be having is, why are people afraid to use AI? Because until you answer that second question and allay those fears, the first question doesn't matter. They're never going to get to the point where they're exploring, they're being innovative if they're living in fear.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. If you think it's going to take your job, why would you learn how to use it?
Right. Well, it's like those people that are, that are, you get it's like, hey, we need you to train this foreign person to do your job so that you will then be out of a job.
For no reason. There's no reason. You're just randomly training somebody else that you just met today.
On all of your current projects and everything that you do daily, train them on this. Yeah. No suspicion.
Yeah.
Whatsoever.
Well, and I think, when we talk about fear, right? Fear is based on things. And this is exactly it, right? We went through a very large season of time where jobs have been offshored and outsourced. And I think we've seen that behavior happen where, train this person on your job for no specific reason. And then we see, jobs get cut. And so there is that kind of, reality that has happened that now is saying, well, wait, this feels a lot like that did. Is this kind of the same kind of thing? And so I think there really is the reality of, instead of saying, hey, how do I use this and how do I make my life easier and how do I make my time go further? It's, wait a minute. This reminds me a lot of, when we went through this other season and is this going to have the same outcome? And so I think there's a very, there's a base in that reality that's there for that fear.
Yeah. Well, I think, I think when a leader says, efficiency gains, and an employee hears your job is on the table. It's not that it's even a communication problem between them. Again, there's a trust problem that's happening there. So a lot of what happens, it's like it's as simple as you're not going to be able to address a problem if you're not clear what the problem is. Number one. And so it comes down to, I've often said that, organizations that are good at change management specifically, there's a process for it. Mm-hmm. If they make that kind of a foundational skill set, those organizations are able to adjust much more quickly and move than others, because it's part of their DNA. And I think this fits within that. And as part of that, there's always, in change management, there's the technology, there's the process, and there's the people side of it. And so having that, again, that a methodology around change management, it forces you to ask certain questions all along. And so if you push your AI initiatives through that same change management process, then you're going to unearth a lot of these people questions a lot more quickly than someone who does not.
Yeah.
So I know I'm jumping from culture into kind of the practical application, but again, I think it comes down to cultures that are better with change are the ones that are more readily addressing these human issues.
Well, and that's what I was going to ask. Is so, based on what I was thinking in terms of, we have this fear and the fear is real and it's, based on something in the past. Do you think that organizations that have a healthier, more quantitative change management model, they're more transparent, they're more open, where people are not afraid about losing their jobs? They know that if something's going to happen, there's going to be a conversation, but it's going to be honest and open. Do you think that those organizations are going to get more out of the AI,
Yes, I definitely. There's interesting, one of as I was going research on each of these topics and try to find stats, for each of these things. Ernst & Young found that 75% of employees are concerned AI will make certain jobs obsolete. Again, concern versus reality. There's a difference there, folks. But 77% of that 75% said they'd be more comfortable if employees at all levels were involved in the adoption process. So they were, even though they're concerned about it, they're saying, but you need to involve us in it. And an interesting thing happens. People don't want to be protected from change. Don't shelter me from it. Be upfront. Let's have these conversations. That's also going to help us uncover myth versus reality of what can be automated with AI. It's I know we always talk about this. Microsoft is not the best at naming products, but I thought it was brilliant naming their AI platform Copilot, because it's not the pilot. It's there to assist the pilot. And so there's always that human piece. And that just reminds me of everything that we're doing, everything we're building with AI. I think of it very much this way. It helps me get better. I'm faster. Like going and creating an email. Like I love that it can take, here's a couple bullets and it will go do a formatted email and like a longer, thing out there. I write in notes. I write in bullet points.
It's writing my agendas for me.
Right. So to go and create that, very quickly, I'm still involved. It cannot do that. I still have to accept it. I tweak it. I change. I add other things to it. No, do this. Like AI is not going to do that. Doesn't matter how well trained your model is. It's not going to know exactly what needs to be said or not. It might get, 2 out of 3, 3 out of 4 correct. I might not change anything and hit send on it, but I still hit the send. I still accepted that. There's still a human making the decision there. That then allows me to go and spend more of my time on other things and not sitting there writing painfully a long formal letter.
Yeah. And this, when I train on AI, this is the thing that I really think about is, I think, the downside is that if people are afraid to use this, right? Because they're too nervous about, am I going to lose my job if I learn this stuff? You're missing out on so many cool things that could make you so much better. So when I train, one of the things that I really encourage people to do is think about if everything that you did that's repetitive and mundane and automatable, essentially, if you could have AI assist you with that, right? First of all, let's be really honest. Nobody wants to do that stuff anyways, right? Most people don't want to do that stuff. So yay, we now don't have to mess with it. And I really kind of push people to think, what would you do with that time? right? And I understand it may not be a lot of time, but let's say I give you 30 minutes back or an hour back because you don't have to, write things, in triplicate because, AI can just kind of generate a summary of it. Let's say I even give you an hour back in your day. What are you going to do with that time? And what's really interesting to me is I have this conversation in training all the time. Everybody's always like, oh, I have so many other things I could be doing that are more valuable than rewriting the same meeting notes 5 times. And so ultimately, I think part of this is that when we think about people who are rolling this out, when we think about leadership plans, when we think about change management plans, they're so quick to the use it draw that they're not keeping up with the, okay, let's get this rolled out so that we can do the other things, so that we can find the value, that's kind of hidden behind it.
Right. Yeah. It's funny. I mean, this, again, it goes back to human behavior and technology deployments in general, and any new technology that comes in where you're not opening, you're not discussing it. There's not training. It's not a cultural thing that we're doing together. Even if you're not involved in the initial pilots for it, that work out loud, that making it transparent. Here's what we're doing. Here's what we learned from it. Here's what came out of this and what we're going to do next, is that you're driving a lot of the conversations. Like, people aren't going to stop talking about it. It's just going to increase fear. You're just driving it underground. It means that if you're wondering what is going on with your adoption metrics by department, for example, you're going to look at, well, who are the managers, what training has been done, and it usually directly corresponds with where there's been managed training, where the change management process has been fully deployed there, and so. Yeah, I mean, kind of all these things, working out loud, treating innovation, giving, as we talked about last episode, giving innovation time to breathe and to, kind of permeate through the organization and adjust to, what did we learn from this? Let's go a pilot. I love saying to clients that I said, well, we ran a pilot and the data showed us this. I said, oh, so when you learned from that, what did you learn in the second pilot? Like, what? You just ran one pilot. You saw that it didn't give you good data and you were done. You made a decision based off of that. You didn't take that learning, fold it back in and go do it again. So yeah, I think I've kind of jumped into the personal stories section of this, but
Right.
I think there's, I've been in a room where a leader celebrated, an automation win. This is back in the manufacturing cycle world. And it was in front of every team that was having most of their worlds automated, and didn't understand why people then didn't applaud for that. You need to involve people in the process. And again, I don't think a lot of these leaders are trying to be cruel with it. They're just, it's blindness, but the impact is the same. And so the quietest person in your AI strategy meeting might be the most anxious one. You've got to draw that out of people. If people are disengaged, that should make you want to reach out and connect with them even more. I'm one of those people I don't know if you do this, Sharon, when you're teaching classes, especially in person. I even do this. I teach a primary class with, young kids at Sunday school. And, the quiet one is like the ones who are like, okay, you're being too quiet. I don't trust that. I'm going to ask you a question. What's going on with you? But trying to draw that engagement out of people usually is where you start identifying where that anxiety is and can better answer those questions.
Yeah. So speaking of, maybe we should start talking about some strategies for how we can solve this. And I definitely think like what you're saying is, well, first of all, look for it, right? Watch for where people don't want to do it. They're afraid of it. They're not using it. Maybe people are, making comments about, oh yeah, I don't know if I want to use this. Probably going to take my job, like those kinds of things. I mean, I think ultimately when we see those metrics and people are like kind of flabbergasted by, we rolled all this out, it's super amazing, and literally nobody's using it, that is data, that is information. And if nobody's using it, why are they not using it? Is it because they don't know they have it? Is it because they don't know how to use it? Or is it because they're afraid of using it? And if that's the case, you're probably going to need to do something.
It's interesting. I know you and I both just got done coaching some groups, international groups for the Microsoft Imagine Cup. So we were both mentors as part of that, and prepping my team to go and pitch. And I said, be aware of the questions they're asking and the questions they're not asking.
Mm-hmm.
And both will tell you something about it. And so I don't know if you watched my team's presentation.
I did.
I think they did a great job. I liked how the judging panel, they had a lot of praise for my team afterwards. I was like, all right, go team. Yeah. Anyway. All right.
My team went right before yours.
Yeah. So I think, naming the fear out loud, calling it out, saying, I know some of you are wondering what AI means for your role, and that's a legitimate concern, not a weakness. I mean, that one sentence does more for adoption than any training module would ever do. That frees people up to release some of that tension. And okay, they do understand. Yeah, I do have tension. I am anxious about this. I do have fears that this is going to take my job away.
Yeah.
And so you've got to recognize that fear and be transparent about it and be honest to say, hey, there are some things which will go away in your jobs. But part of what we want to figure out is there's always a list of things that you never have time enough to go and do. That if you had another hand, if you had somebody junior come on, take over that piece, that's what AI can be to allow you then to do that. The theory is the higher value activities now.
Yeah. And I think the teams that I see that are working on this together, that are rolling it out together, that, like you said, are being transparent about what's happening, that are open to having those conversations. I feel like those groups are adopting AI so much faster than the groups that are holding back and not having the conversation, where people are afraid and because it's not even not ability to talk about AI. They don't have the ability to talk about anything. And so they're not entirely sure what's happening in general. And so I do think practicing that transparency, making sure that everybody knows what's going on and working together is really important.
I also like what you used earlier too, calling it's about augmentation. Reframing AI as augmentation, it only works if the behavior matches the message. So if you tell people, hey, AI is here to support you, which is great, if that's on Monday and then you on Friday announce headcount reductions, you've just destroyed whatever trust that you had there.
Right.
So be careful with that.
Yeah. Well, and also show them how it's helping them. I think this is a really important thing too. One of the things that I'm really enjoying right now is I'm doing a lot of leadership training. And I'm doing leadership training because they're wanting to get that training first, so that they then know what their messaging is going to be, right? A lot of them don't even know what they're going to tell the employees, because the leaders are still trying to figure it out. And I think ultimately, if leadership understands what they're doing with it and how they're using it as a support system, and they're showing those real world business scenarios, then I think that helps people to start trusting, oh, I see how my leaders are using this as support for their roles. And I see how this will be a support for my role too, as opposed to just, here's some AI, use it.
Right. I think with the training too, that you can't just expect to go in, show people the basics of how to use certain tools out there. It needs to be much more structured. It needs to be scenario based, role based, division, based as well. I think it's interesting. KPMG did a study where they found that while 85% of the organizations that they studied were providing some sort of AI training, 84% of the employees that were in those companies said that they needed more training. So that's not a training gap. It's a confidence gap. So that's why having structured, there's first the functionality to go and use. It's like training to use Microsoft Word. Okay, I get the best, how to use the features where they are. Now to put those features into practice of how do I actually leverage this to do more, to now go write these, papers, based off of this. It's a little bit different. It's the application of those features into now a business problem. And so having that structured training to move people through, you can't just teach them how to use the basics of the technology and then assume they'll go and use it in the best way and get advanced. And so that's why that's ongoing. I would say even follow up that's more role specific, then to get specific training around automations, then to come back and work with certain roles and certain types of automations, give them problems to do. It's give them projects to go and, kind of repeatable things that they could go and build for themselves. There's ways of doing that. I mean, you and I did that. We were working with a year and a half ago with a training for a company where I think we ended up doing more office hours. It was almost like a 2-to-1 of office hours over the workshops. So we did the trainings, and then we had this time where we just sit and answer questions and demo. And it was just like, okay, let's go through that. We might spend an entire hour demoing and answering questions around one or two key scenarios that came up at the beginning of the hour. And again, helping them put it into practice. And I think that building that trust by being involved, advancing it, having, it's not just a one and done training and hope for the best that, hey, we're now adopted.
Right. The idea of involving a support system afterwards so that you have somebody to help them, somebody to answer their questions. And also it's training, so we think about like training users on how to use it, training leaders on how to lead, right? So training them on how to make sure that everybody feels good about it, make sure they're being heard, make sure there's a feedback opportunity, make sure there's psychological safety that's out there. Like the leaders should be doing their job, but the managers should also be doing their jobs. And part of that is if somebody gives me an AI created product, am I looking at that product and holding them accountable to the information being accurate, the structure being done correctly, the process being followed correctly? Just because they can do some of these things, am I still being a good manager and maybe being like, whoa, I haven't seen agendas come out of this person in a long time. I'm just happy they're getting agendas. Or am I now going up with them as a manager and saying they're pushing out agendas? Are the agendas correct? Are they accurate? Right. Do they have the right information, right? Because I think what's happening is it's forcing everybody to kind of level up a little bit. And I think if you create that support system for that to happen, then you're going to get a lot more out of that adoption engagement.
I think it's another thing about metrics that you have to be careful of is that you might be doing, I'm all for having adoption metrics to look at what's happening across different divisions and teams in your organization and look at that. You cannot look at that. To your point, the metrics can be giving you one piece of data, but not telling the entire story of what actually is happening, the quality of what's being done. You might be seeing lower adoption numbers elsewhere, but the quality is much higher. And so it's something that, again, some space needs to be given to managers, have it as a conversation, like what is going on with your division, with your organization. How can we improve this? How can we move this up? What does it actually look like and mean inside of your organization with your roles, with the people that you manage? And so I think if you have that kind of transparent conversation around adoption, you're going to have much more organic, healthier adoption and less fear about what that actually means.
It'll stick, right? I mean, you're not forcing people into a change that's just going to revert as soon as they don't have to do it anymore. You're getting them to see the value in the change, so they want to change, and that change will stick.
I like that. I have a keynote that I've given several times on that, making change stick. And that is the key, because change, you can have a process and it can be perfect, but if it doesn't stick, you got nothing.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Well, thanks so much, everybody, for watching this week's episode. Be sure to follow us and subscribe. Recordings are always out on YouTube. You can go out and find us at YouTube at Project Failure Files. Out on all the socials, we push stuff out there. There's also, like, I've got my Substack going. Sharon still has an invite.
I opened it.
Did you? Okay.
I did. I just have to log in.
I'm just, sharing some of my thoughts on each week's topics, and maybe Sharon will share some of hers as well out there, but lots of opportunities for out there. So you can find us, at projectfailurefiles.substack.com as well. But until next Monday, till next time, we'll see you later.
See you next time.